Let's begin. Okay, we are on Daf Chaf Amud Bet 20b1. So the Mishnah that we discussed before told us a very simple idea. It told us that the beginning of the time for the megilla and a few of the other things, what time does it begin? It begins at Netzach Hama. And B'di'evid, if you did it at Alot HaShachar, which is from daybreak, before sunrise, so then it's kosher B'di'evid, and that's what the Mishnah was talking about. So up until now, we talked about it in the Mishnah. You want to close the door, actually, maybe. Up until now, we talked about in the Mishnah from what time you could start the morning obligations. Now the Mishnah is going to go the other way. Not from what time, but really until what time. So let's take a look at that. The Mishnah says on 20b1, right at the bottom, the whole day, a person is able to read the Megillah. And also to read Halil. Shofar, and to blow the shofar. And as well to netilat lulav, and to take and to shake the lulav. V'tfilat musafin, you'll have to pray musaf until the whole day. V'la musafin, and to sacrifice the musaf korbanot. V'levidui parim, and to do the vidui that you would do on the par. So as an example, what are we talking about over here? We're talking about two separate types of confession that you would make on a vidui, on a par. One of them is the vidui that you would make on the par, he'elem davar. So if the bet din made a ruling and they ruled on something that you were allowed to do it, and then everybody in the people, the nation, they followed in the words of the Sanhedrin. So you have mass, transgression based on a mistaken psak halacha given by Sanhedrin. That's called par he'elem davar of the tzibur, okay, of the Sanhedrin. But there's also par he'elem davar, a bull that's brought if a kohen gadol makes a mistake, and that's also with the same caveat. He makes a mistake on something which is asur karet. So if he does that, he has to bring a bull. But now both of those cases, before you bring that bull, you have to put your hands on top of the animal, and you have to say, we'll see in a minute what else you have to do, but you have to confess the sin that you did, by mistake. Okay? Says the Mishnah, what else? Vidui ma'aser. Also there's a vidui for ma'aser. Specifically two different types of ma'aser, the ma'aser of the 4th year and the 7th year. The pasuk says, bi'arti hakodesh ben abayit. I took everything out from the house that I was supposed to. I didn't forget anything. It's a pasuk in the Torah. So when the person makes this confession, that also is something that needs to be done throughout the entire day. And the vidui of Yom Kippur, which the Kohen would do on the sacrifices that he would bring, in the Holy of Holies. He would sprinkle in the Holy of Holies. So that's the bull and as well the goat of Azazel that we had the lots for. L'smicha, for when a person does smicha, what does smicha mean? Smicha means anytime a person would have a korban, the person who's bringing the korban needs to take both of his hands and he needs to lean with all of his weight on the top of the animal. And that's supposed to say, so to speak, that the animal is carrying your burden, your weight, your averot. L'shchita, the slaughtering of the animal when you bring the korban. L'tnufa, when you would wave. What does it mean to wave? You would take the specific parts of the animal that you were supposed to do this with, and you would do tenufa. You would lift it, you would shake it in the 4 directions, similar to what we do when we have a lulav. La hagasha, what does hagasha mean? Hagasha is a specific term that we use with regards to the mincha, that after you took the amount of flour you were supposed to, you would bring that flour offering, you would bring it to the mizbech. So the hagasha, the bringing close, needs to be during the daytime. L'kmitza u'la'aktara. What's kmitza? Kmitza is when a kohen hangs 10. He takes the middle 3 fingers and he gathers the amount that he's supposed to gather, and then he takes the top and the bottom of his fingers. Okay, all of you Kohanim should know this. You see what I'm doing with my pinky? You take your pinky and you smooth out the bottom, and then you do the same thing with the thumb until the amount of meal is exactly the amount that's stuck in between those 3 fingers and your palm. That's kmitza. Ulahaktara, and
this is what the student tells Haman. Oh, sorry.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what the right.
That's the student told Haman that they had just learned about. Okay, lul haktara, and for the sacrificing of that korban on the mizbeach of the mincha, lim milika. What does milika mean? So what you have in a korban is you have shechita. When it comes to a bird, we don't do a shechita with a knife. The kohanim, I don't know if you ever saw the thumb of a mohel. It's like pointed and like cut to a point. They have it that way so they could use their nail in the process of the brit milah. Okay. So if you notice now, you'll start to see that a mohel has like a thumbnail that grows out longer, and it's cut like onto an angle to a point. Okay, so the kohen would have the same thing, and the shechita was actually done with the nail of the kohen to the back of the neck of the bird, and that's how he would do shechita for the korbanot that were from birds. V'le kabbalah, and to receive the blood when the shechita happens, the blood is caught in a vessel, and that blood is what they use for the korban ul hazayah, and the sprinkling of the blood onto the mizbeach, ul hashkayat sotah. Also, so all of those were elements of the avodah of a korban. So all the avodah needs to be done during the daytime. Says the Mishnah, ul hashkayat sotah, and also for we give the sotah to drink. If you remember what happens with a sotah is someone that we don't know that she did an act of adultery. If we did, there is no sotah. So when we're sure that there's an act of adultery, then if there's witnesses, then and hatra'ah, she gets the death penalty. They actually tell her that. They tell her she needs to understand that when she does the action. Okay? She needs witnesses and a warning. However, what if she doesn't have witnesses and a warning, but we still know that she did it for sure? Also no sotah. Sotah is when we don't know for sure, but we have reason to believe that there's something here to suspect. How do we know that there's something here to suspect? Because in order to have korban sotah, you would need kinui ustira. What does that mean? You need that the husband should have noticed already before that she has a very close relationship with this specific person. And he tells her, look, I'm jealous of you hanging around with this person privately. I forbid you from being alone with him. Now, of course, she's always forbidden from being alone with him with the laws of Yichud. But here, if she breaks or violates the laws of Yichud, and there's witnesses that she was alone with him after the husband said, I don't want you to be alone with him. I know that I feel like there's something going on there. I suspect something. So in that case where there's smoke, there's fire. So in that case, what do? We give the sotah, the waters to drink. The waters of the sotah are a special concoction involving the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is erased from a piece of parchment. It involves the dust from the floor of the Beit HaMikdash. Lots of different things that go together to give her this water. And once she drinks the water, so then the waters themselves test her. If she is guilty, then she dies a terrible death actually from the waters. Now, if she knows she's guilty, she could just say, I'm guilty. Right. And then she doesn't drink. Right. It's only if she's maintaining her innocence. The purpose of the waters of the sotah was not to punish her, it was to prove her innocence. Okay? So if she's not guilty, she drinks from the waters. If she's innocent, right? Sorry, if she's guilty, then she dies from the waters. So the drinking, the giving to drink, lahashkayat sotah, the giving of the waters to drink, the sotah. Also with the egla arufa. What's egla arufa? Egla arufa is the calf that they take off the head of the calf. It's kind of like a korban of sorts, but it's an odd korban. When is it relevant? It's relevant in a case where you have someone that dies outside of the city and nobody knows, we have no idea who killed this person. We just find his dead body outside the city. So we are trying to figure out, what do? If it's in between two cities, we measure which city is he closest to. If he's two cities, we measure from both cities and we find which one he's closest to. Then the elders of that city have to come out. They need to make a declaration that they didn't spill this blood, that they had no responsibility, they didn't neglect to give him food or drink, or to accompany him out into the field to give him levaya. And then they do the egla arufa. They do the actual act of like this reverse shechita from the back of the neck of the egla, of the calf, and that also needs to be done during the day. Also for the purification of the mitzorah. So we've already explained that the purification of the mitzorah is once we already identify that he has tzarat, and now he's already in a situation where he's coming to get pure. So we have a special korban. There's a bird, and we use the grass of the ezov, and we use a piece of cedar wood, and we tie it together with the shnitolat, the red string, and they dip it in the blood. And in the process of taharat mitzorah, of him becoming pure, also needs to be done during the day. So the Mishnah says, all these mitzvot that you have to do them during the day, you could do them the whole day. So it's not like I have to do them for part of the day. Now let's just be clear. This idea that you can keep a mitzvah that says to be doing it in the day, at any part of the day, is dafka when the Torah did not tell you when during the day to do it. If there's a case where the Torah told you at what point during the day you should do it, as an example, Korban Pesach. Right. With Korban Pesach, you're supposed to do it as the sun is setting. So there the Torah delineated this is the right time to do it. But in a regular case, where the Torah just gave you a time, and when is the time? Daytime. So the halacha is, when do you do it? Anytime during the day. Now we've already seen earlier in the last Mishnah, even though you're allowed to do it the whole day, there's an ideal time in the day to do it. When is that? After sunrise. Why? Because before sunrise, it's still a time where people might make a mistake as to whether or not it's day, right? Because they're not experts in how much light constitutes the alot hashachar. So therefore we gave you the more concrete time, the time of the sunrise, okay? Because that you could see the ball of the sun coming up over the edge. There's no mistaking that. Okay, so Netzach Hama is the first available moment to be able to do a mitzvah. So really, technically, with all mitzvot, there's an idea, Zrizim Makdimin mitzvah, which means that the earlier you could do it, that's a big chidush, that's a big koach for doing the mitzvah in the right way. That's Zrizim Makdimin mitzvah. But that's an added bonus of doing it in the best possible way, as quickly as possible in the morning. However, in terms of whether or not it's kosher the entire day. Says the Mishnah. Okay, now that we've established that daytime mitzvot are all throughout the day. So now what about nighttime? So when it comes to Ketzirat Omer, when we cut the Omer, the barley before the korban of the Omer on the next day, before Shavuot, on the second day of Pesach, okay? So when we do the Korban Omer, when do we cut the Omer? We cut the Omer specifically at nighttime. So what else is there? When you bring a Korban, so the Korban has various parts that need to be brought on the Mizbeach. The fats of the Korban, the emurim, which means the elements, the body parts that are supposed to be burned on the Mizbeach, the evarim, the limbs. So those things that are supposed to be burned on the Mizbeach, when do we do them? So the Mishnah says you do them at night. Now it's important to note that unlike Omer you have to do at night. Hekter evarim and chalavim, you're allowed to do at night. But the point is, once I'm allowed to do it at night, or if I have to do it at night, at what point in the night? Doesn't matter, the whole night is valid. There's not like a part of the night that you can't use. This is the rule. Anything which is specified as a mitzvah to do during the day, you can do the whole day. Anything you're supposed to do at nighttime, kasher, you're allowed to do the entire nighttime. Okay, now let's ask, the Gemara is going to ask, how do we know these laws? Ask the Gemara, Minalan, how do I know that the reading of the Megillah is specifically supposed to be done during the daytime? Where do we get that from? The Gemara already answered this, ironically, in the last go-round, because we were asked, how do you know that it needs to be, during the time of sunrise versus daybreak? So the Gemara over there said, these days are remembered and done. So you see that the Pasuk specifically says that the time of the Megillah is v'hayamim. Let's move on. What about Hallel? How do we know that Hallel has to be during the daytime? The Gemara says the Kriyat Hallel. How do you know? D'chtiv, because the Pasuk in Hallel says, Mizrach Shemesh, from when the sun rises. A lot of people translate Mizrach Shemesh as from the sun in the east. But Zarach means sunrise, right? When the sun comes up. That's why Mizrach is Mizrach, because it's the place of the sunrise. So the Mizrach Shemesh ad mevo'o, which means from the rising sun until when it sets, Mehulal Shem Amonai, we praise God. So you see, number one, in the Hallel itself, we have a verse that tells us that when do we recite Hallel? From daybreak, and has to be during the daytime. Ad mevo'o, until it sets. So that's the window for Hallel. The Gemara continues. Rabbi Yossi says, no, different pasuk. In Hallel, we also say another pasuk. What pasuk do we say? This is the day. So since you say this is the day, that also illustrates that this is supposed to be said during the day. The Gemara asks, what about lulav? Well, netilat lulav, because the pasuk says, B'yom harishon, take for yourself on the first day. Since it says specifically, take for yourself on the first day, that illustrates that the taking of the lulav is limited specifically to the daytime. What about Tkiyat Shofar? Tkiyat Shofar, Tichtiv, because it says Yom Teruah Yelachem. It's a day of blowing of the shofar. So since it expresses that this day is a day of shofar blowing, we know that the shofar is also meant to be blown during the daytime. Ula Musafin, what about when it comes to the Musaf? Now, we don't mean the Musaf prayers here, we mean the Musaf sacrifices. Because the Pasuk says, Devar Yom Biyomo, each offering is done on its day. When we're talking about the Korban Musaf, we say each one is on its day. So we again say that the daytime is the time for the Korban Musaf. What about Tfilat Musafin? What about the prayer of Musaf? The Gemara answers, Ki Musafin Shavir Rabbanan. Since the prayer of Musaf is meant to replace the Korban of Musaf, if the Korban of Musaf is during the daytime, when is the prayer of Musaf going to be? Also during the daytime. The Gemara now continues with the next series of objects. Ulevidui parim. What about when it comes to a vidui of the parim, the confession that you make on the bull? So we already explained. What is that referring to? That's referring to the par he'elem davar, which means when the bet din made a mistake in halacha, or when the kohen gadol made a mistake in halacha. How do you know that the vidui of the bulls is during the daytime? The Gemara answers, kapara, kapara, miyom kippurim. We learn kapara, kapara, for Yom Kippurim. It says kapara by the vidui of the korban, of the kohen gadol, and of the bet din that made a mistake. And it also says kapara when it comes to the vidui of the korban on Yom Kippur. So just like the Tanya, because we learned in the Braita, Gabi Yom Kippurim, v'chiper ba'ado ba'ad beto, the pasuk says when he brings that korban, he gets forgiveness for himself and for his whole household. V'chaparat advarim hakatuv bedaber. The pasuk is obviously talking about with getting kapara, because it says v'chiper ba'ado. V'kapara b'imamahu, and forgiveness, any type of atonement happens b'imamahu during the daytime. Tichtiv, because it says ki bayom hazeh yichaper alechem. For on this day, Yechaper Alechem, do you get kapara? So therefore, since the vidui on Yom Kippur says V'chiper ba'ado, and separately we know when does kapara happen during the daytime, because the pasuk says Ki bayom hazeh Yechaper Alechem. Therefore, we know that kapara is the daytime, and therefore vidui of the Yom Kippur korban is going to be on during the daytime. So how do we know that we get from there to Yom Kippurim? And how do we know we get from there to Par Helem Davar when they made a mistake, either in the Beit Din or as a Kohen? The Gemara answers because it says kapara there too. So kapara there goes to kapara by Yom Kippur. Kapara by Yom Kippur has to be during the day because it says so therefore, since kapara is only something that happens during the daytime, so therefore we know that the vidui of all of these three things that we just mentioned in one fell swoop we label as during the daytime.
But we do a lot of these things at night also.
What do you mean?
We do Hallel at night on Pesach. We do vidui at night on Yom Kippur.
We do vidui, correct. Yeah. It's a different vidui. Over here we're talking about the vidui over the korban.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So it's a good question with regards to Hallel. It's a good question. I have one answer.
Okay.
What's my answer?
We're supposed to say it into the day, I guess. We're supposed to be late.
No, it's supposed to be at nighttime.
Right.
It's supposed to be at nighttime. But first of all, that Hallel is different to all other Hallels.
Right.
All the other Hallels are judged or are brought there by the holiday day requiring Hallel. The Hallel of crossing the sea was a Hallel in recognition of the fact that they were crossing the sea. And when were they crossing the sea? At night.
Right.
So we're saying Hallel at the time of the crossing of the sea.
Okay.
But in general, all of the Hallels are obviously said during the daytime because they're judged and based on the day. But you still have a good question. If it's said at night, why do you have Bayom?
We'll also say Zehayom Asa.
We say those words of Zehayom and we say Mizak Shem Shad Mevu'om. So I think there's a second answer to that, which is that during that time, we know that God brought a tremendous darkness to the Mitzrayim, but for the Jewish people, they had a huge amount of light. So we find that there's this element that sometimes a nighttime can also be classified as a day. When else do we find this? On the night of Pesach. On the actual night when they left Egypt, they needed to do Brit Milah. So the Talmud tells us that they did Brit Milah that night, and then they ate the Korban Pesach. Everyone asks, one of the obligations of Brit Milah is to have Brit Milah during the day. How did they do it? The answer is that God lit up that night with the sun. The sun shone, so to speak, for the Jewish people throughout the whole night, so it was classified as a daytime. Okay. So too here. The Gemara continues. What about the vidui of maaseh, that you proclaim that you took everything out of the house and there's nothing left from your maaseh? Because the pasuk says, "Ve'amarta lefnei Hashem Elokecha," and you'll say in front of Hashem your God, "Bi'arti hakodesh min habayit." I took the sanctified stuff, min habayit, from my house. V'samich le, and the next immediate pasuk it says, "Hayom hazeh Hashem Elokecha mitzavecha." On this day, Hashem your God is commanding you. So therefore, the Torah is connecting Hayom hazeh, this day that Hashem is speaking to you, is commanding you. It's connecting at the Gemara with the parasha that came before, which is the confession on the Maaser that you're saying that you didn't leave anything out. Okay. Where are we? Okay, so we have the Hekesh of Yom Hazeh to the Vidui of Maaser. Now the Gemara wants to know, what about Smicha and what about Shechita? The Smicha l'Shechita, how do we know that leaning on the Korban and slaughtering the Korban, they have to be during the daytime? Because the Pasuk says, V'samach v'shachat, when talking about the Korban, it says both of these verbs. You should lean on it and you should slaughter it. And then what does it say? V'ksiv ba b'shechita, and it says by shechita b'yom zivchachem, in the daytime of your korbanot. So since it says yom zivchachem, on the day of your slaughtering of the korbanot, it references that the slaughtering happens during the daytime, and since we have samach and shechita put together, so those two things coming together tells you that if shechita is during the daytime, so smicha, which means a leaning, is also during the daytime. So just to be clear, sometimes what we do is we connect A to C. Sometimes what we do is we connect B to C, but we also connect A to B. So if B is connected to C and A is connected to B, then A is also connected to C. Exactly. The Gemara then continues. Okay, what about l'tenufa? About the waving of the parts of the korban that need to be waved. It says on the day that you're going to wave the korban of the omer. The Gemara continues. Ula hagasha. What about when it comes to bringing the keli sharet, the vessel of the Bet HaMikdash that has the flour in it for the mincha? How do you know the hagasha also needs the itkish l'tenufa? Because itkish means that we did a hekesh to tenufa. Why? What's the hekesh? How are we connecting the two? That the kohen will take from the woman minchat kanaot, which is referring now to the korban of a sotah. So he takes her mincha, vehenif vehikriv, and continues and says on that thing, on the taking of the flour that was used for the sotah, he does tenufa on it, and he brings it closer to Mizbeach. So therefore, you see that we took this element, which was the bringing close of the meal offering in the vessel into the holies. So in such a case, if it's connected over here with tenufa to hagasha, so if we already expressed to you that tenufa biyom henifchem, we already had a pasuk on tenufa, so all I have to do is connect it to tenufa, and that's what the Gemara did. What about the milika, ul'kmitza, ul'haktara, ul'hazaya? What about for the milika, which means taking off the neck of the bird with the finger, ul'kmitza, and for taking the amount of the komets, of the meal offering, ul'haktara, and for the sacrificing on and the burning on the mizbech, ul'hazaya, and for the sprinkling of the blood, which brings a person tahara. Because it says, on the day that I commanded the Bnei Israel. Let's take a look quickly at the pasuk. Pasuk is number Yom Tzavotot Bnei Israel. Do you see it's right at the bottom? One line up from the bottom in the Pesukim. Asher tziva Amonai et Moshe, just like Hashem commanded by Sinai on Mount Sinai. Biyom tzavotot bnei Israel lakriv et korbanehem Hashem min bar Sinai. So the way, on the day that Hashem commanded the Jewish people to bring their korban to the Beit HaMikdash. So how are we seeing from there that all of these things are part of that? All it says is that they're going to bring their korban. So the answer is that all of these things, milika, kimitza, haktara, hazaya, are all part of the core avodah of bringing korban. So therefore, if I have in the pasuk something that tells me that the avodah of an animal, the sacrificing of an animal, the halachic parts of it, are done biyom during the daytime, so then I know that all of those elements are also limited to the daytime. Now the Gemara asks, what about, how did the Mishnah know that a sotah that drinks also has to drink during the daytime? Ulehashkayat sotah, how do you know? Atya, the Gemara says, Atya Torah, we learned from a Gzerah Shavah that Atya Torah, that Torah was, the two times that we find the word Torah are both of them referencing things that are only during the daytime. How do we know? It says over here, right, by Ve'asala HaKohen et kol hazot. The Torah will do et kol HaTorah hazot, all that is said in this book. And then it says, and it says over there, Al pi HaTorah asher yerucha v'al HaMishpat, right, for the Torah that they commanded you, that they expressed to you, v'al HaMishpat, and for the laws and the judgment that they're communicating with you. So you see that that these two times, these two instances, are connected by the Gzerah Shavah of the word Torah. By the Sotah, it says this is the Torah of the Sotah. Elsewhere, it says these are the Torah that has this Torah Sheyeduch Hayal Mishpat. That for all the Torah that you're commanded is also something which is during the day. So therefore, just like the Torah of the Kohen just like the Torah over here is during the daytime, also Torah over there is during the daytime. So what is the Torah? How do you know that the other Torah is also during the daytime? So you got me to connect Torah to Torah. How do I know that the other Torah is during the daytime? You connected me Sotah to Torah, but you didn't tell me what is the connection between that second Torah and this one. The Gemara answers, because it says to all the Torah that I will command you, that I will teach you. Ma mishpat, and it uses the word mishpat. Ma mishpat bayom, afkan bayom. Since we only hear court cases during the daytime and not at night, so since judgment is during the daytime, and it says, HaTorah sheyerucha ve'al ha-mishpat, so since the mishpat is during the daytime, so that verse is during the daytime. And if you have the word Torah over here, and that's connected to mishpat, so that's daytime. So also, if B equals C, and now I can tell you, A equals B through Torah, therefore the drinking of the sotah is also during the daytime. Now, the Gemara, we're going to finish this Mishnah, so hopefully it's all in the same vein. Larifata eglah, what about the calf that they brought for a dead person they didn't know the cause of the death? Amri, the Rabbi Yanai, the house of Rabbi Yanai said, kapara ktivba bekodashim. The word of kapara, it says, just like all of the kodashim of the sacrifices. So therefore, since the sacrifices all have to be done during the day, like we said already before, so therefore also over here, once it says kapara by arifat eglah, so even though the eglah is not a regular korban, but we do like a gzerah shavah of kapara to kapara. How about taharat mitzorah? How do we know that the mitzvah is only the Gemara says this is the laws of this mitzvah biyom on the day of his tahara. The Gemara now says the second part of the Mishnah. The whole night you're able to cut down the omer for the korban omer. The Gemara says, how do you know that it needs to be done during the nighttime, and the bringing of the korban is during the daytime? So the kitzirah, the cutting of the omer, of the barley, is in the nighttime. The bringing of the korban is in the daytime. And how do you know the hekter of the what's it called? The fats and the body and the limbs. How do we know that that's brought during the evening? Because the pasuk says, "Dechtiv kol halayla ad haboker," the whole night until the day. So when it comes to the Ktsirat Omer, we bring the Amar Mar, we bring the teaching of Mar that the cutting is in the nighttime. And you bring it during the daytime. Now the Gemara did not have a proof for Ktsirat Omer, right? Even though we said over a teaching of Mar, but how did Mar know it? Right? The Gemara actually is relying on the fact that the Sfirah has to happen during the nighttime. Right? Because that's what we said. Right? Remember when you do the Sfirat Omer, you're able to count the whole night. What if you remember it in the daytime, like we do when we in Shacharit? You do it without a bracha. Why? Because the opinion that says that the Ikar of Sfirah, of counting, is at nighttime. So therefore, Sfirah and Ktsirah put together in the teaching of Mar, and therefore they're both going to be at the nighttime. How about the Hekter Chalavim Emarim? Because it says you burn them the entire night until the morning. So you see again that the bringing of those elements on the Mizbeach at nighttime, and a lot of times, by the way, if it got busy, so let's say you have Korban A, and you have the end of Korban A is to burn the fats and the limbs.
Right.
But there's a traffic jam. Everyone's trying to be in Korban Pesach. What do? They take the Evarim and the Chalavim and the Chelev, and they just wait. They don't keep the everything busy here on the Mizbeach. They'll just bring it later on in the evening. Hekter Murim, they'll do it at nighttime. Okay? So they were allowed to push it off, even though you could do it during the daytime. But if there was any sort of a busy schedule in the Beit HaMikdash, they would just push it to the nighttime. The Mishnah says, this is the rule. It's anything which the mitzvah is to do it during the daytime without a specific time specified during the daytime, you're allowed to do it the whole day. The Gemara says, 1 second, if you just gave me 50 examples of all these different things that are during the day and you bring me psukim for them, what do you mean to add when you say this is the rule? The rule is only designed to give you something after you didn't tell me. It's kind of like saying, I want you to do this and 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 everything on the shelf.
Right.
Well, if you just pointed to everything on the shelf, why do you have to say that? Yeah. The only reason why you would have to do that is if you pointed at 5 out of 10 things and then you said everything on the shelf, you're including something. So when you say this is the general rule, you must be including something that you did not mention. So what are we including that we did not mention? The Gemara answers, the adding, what we're talking about here is the setting up and the removal of the spoons. What are we talking about? The spoons. They used to have the mor, which is the specific type of spice that they would put, or herb. I don't know what myrrh is. I think it comes from the sap of a tree. They would take that and they would put that on top of the certain korbanot. So they would take a spoonful of this mor, and you would set them and remove them during the daytime. That's what it's adding when it says and everything that is a mitzvah is during the daytime. Rabbi Yossi, according to the version of Rabbi Yossi, the Braita says, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Silek Shana Shacharit. You took the old one of the Lechem HaPanim with its bazichin, with the frankincense that came along with it. When did you take that away? Shacharit, in the morning. V'sider Chadasha Arvit. And if you put the bread and the new bazichin, the new spoons, Arvit, in the evening, in Mekach Klum, there's no problem with it, even though you left it open the whole day. The Gemara asks, if that's the case, Mani Mekayem. So then, how do I fulfill the pasuk? The pasuk says the Lechem HaPanim needs to be in front of Hashem always. And now you have from the morning until the evening on the same day, but you have that whole space that there's no Lechem HaPanim. The Gemara says, Shlo Yeh Shulchan B'lo Lechem. What does that mean? It just means, it doesn't mean that it needs to be every single split second. It just means that the Shulchan should not go a full night, overnight, without the Lechem HaPanim on it. But for it to be missing from the thing, we never meant tamid in that way. And the Gemara elsewhere actually points this out. Like, there's all different kinds of tamid. Just as an example, you light the menorah tamid. When do you do that? Every time, every night, but at the nighttime. When do you do the tamid of the lechem hapanim? Once a week.
Yeah. On Sunday.
So tamid means weekly. So you could have a tamid that means weekly. You could have a tamid that means daily. You could have a tamid that means with no break at all.
Right.
Each time you have to analyze what does the tamid mean, and that's what the Gemara answers. The tamid over here means it needs to not go a full day without the bread. The Mishnah now continues. Right? It's kosher the whole night, and then at the end the Mishnah also added that same expression, and this is the rule. If it's like this, you already told me the things that you wanted to include. What did you leave out that your general rule is now including? Gemara answers, achilat psachim. It's coming to add achilat psachim, the eating of the korban pesach. And we're coming to express specifically that the Mishnah is not according to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Tanya, the Braita says, they'll eat the meat on this night. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Ne'emar kan b'layla hazeh. It says over here in this night. V'ne'emar lehalan. It says later on, V'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh. I'm going to pass through Mitzrayim on this night. Ma lehalan al chatzot, afkan al chatzot. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds, right? He holds that when are you allowed to eat the Korban Pesach until midnight. Why? Because it says Balayla Hazeh over here. But it also says Balayla Hazeh when God came through the land to kill the Egyptians. When does God kill the Egyptians? On the night of Yetziat Mitzrayim? B'chatzot halayla, at midnight. So therefore Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds that when do you eat the Korban Pesach? The whole night until midnight, but not longer than midnight, right? The Mishnah over here therefore is coming to include with the rule to tell you that we don't hold according to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and what we're communicating is that you have the whole night to do it and not just until Chatzot. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen. Hadran alach hakoreh lemafreya. We've now finished the perek of hakoreh lemafreya, he who reads the megillah backwards. As we said from the beginning, we're going to continue with chapter 3, Be'ezrat Hashem, on Thursday. And I think we made a decision that on Thursday, the way we're going to do it is, it's going to be a half hour after Mincha, until it gets a little bit too early, in which case we'll have maybe a 6 o'clock cutoff. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen.